You've spent $200 on equipment, another 100 on decorations and plants, and 50 more on your first group of fish. 3 weeks later, half of them are dead. You test the water, everything looks perfect. The filter hums quietly. The temperature holds steady at 76 degrees. So why are they dying? Here's what nobody tells beginners. You were watching the wrong things. While you obsessed over pH strips and ammonia levels, your fish were screaming at you in a language you never learned to read. Every dart across the tank, every retreat to a corner, every refusal to eat was a message. You just didn't know how to listen. This isn't about bad luck. This isn't about faulty equipment. This is about the single most expensive mistake in fish keeping: treating fish like decorative objects instead of living creatures with complex behavioral needs. And it's costing beginners thousands of dollars and countless lives every single year. Let's talk about what happens when you ignore fish behavior. Most people enter this hobby thinking it's all about chemistry. Get the water right, everything else falls into place. They buy test kits, they monitor nitrates, they obsess over the nitrogen cycle. All of this matters, yes, but here's the problem. Fish don't wait for your water parameters to kill them. Stress does it faster. Every fish species speaks through movement, through positioning, through the way it interacts with others. When fish display behaviors like swimming patterns, feeding habits, and social interactions, these observations help ensure they're thriving. A betta flaring its fins isn't showing off for you, it's defending territory. A group of tetras huddled in the corner isn't being shy, they're terrified. A catfish refusing to leave its cave during feeding time isn't being picky, it's starving. When fish are first introduced to a tank, they're almost guaranteed to hide, but given proper water parameters, new fish will ease out of hiding and begin to feel comfortable. The question is, are you giving them the conditions they need to feel comfortable, or are you unknowingly creating a nightmare they can't escape? Think about schooling fish for a moment. Beautiful little neon tetras, cardinal tetras, zebra danios. They're everywhere in pet stores, often sold in pairs or small groups of 3 to 5. Seems reasonable, right? Wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Neon tetras and cardinal tetras do best when kept in groups of at minimum 8 to 16 fish. These peaceful schooling fish do best in minimum numbers of about 10 to 15, and keeping them in smaller schools is possible, but they will be much happier and healthier in larger schools. Why does this matter? Because schooling isn't a preference. It's a survival mechanism burned into their DNA over millions of years. In the wild, fish school for protection. There's safety in numbers. When you keep a schooling fish alone or in a tiny group, you're essentially telling it there's a predator nearby that already killed its family. The fish doesn't understand it's in an aquarium. It only knows it's alone, vulnerable, and every moment is potentially its last. Schooling helps fish increase swimming efficiency, and if they're not taught schooling activities, fish tend to have high body stress hormones, which may cause symptoms like infertility, stunted growth, heart problems, and other diseases. This chronic stress suppresses the immune system. Disease takes hold faster. Parasites that a healthy fish would fight off become fatal infections. What does this cost you? Let's do the math. You buy 3 neon tetras at $4 each, $12. Within 2 months, all 3 are dead from stress-related illness. You replace them, thinking it was bad luck. Another $12 gone. Maybe you try different species. Another $20. None survive long. You're now in for $50 to $60 on fish alone, and you haven't learned the actual problem. You're keeping social creatures in solitary confinement. When a larger group of schooling fish is placed in an aquarium, their behavior is such that the group will swim openly throughout the entire aquarium, because security in numbers helps them feel safe and less stressed. But most beginners never experience this because they never provide adequate group sizes. Now, let's talk about the mistake that kills more fish than almost anything else: mixing incompatible species. You walk into a pet store and everything looks peaceful. All these different fish swimming in display tanks together. Surely they can all live together in your tank, right? Here's what pet stores don't always tell you. Some fish fight each other, bully, kill, or eat each other, and managing populations is a huge part of aquarium care. Mixing aggressive fish with incompatible peaceful species is among the leading causes of death in aquariums. Fin nippers like tiger barbs shouldn't be mixed with long-finned fish. Sounds simple, but think about how this plays out in a real tank. You have a beautiful betta with flowing fins. Someone told you tiger barbs are community fish. You had 5 tiger barbs. Within days, your betta's fins are shredded. The fish can barely swim. Stress hormones flood its system. Secondary infections set in. The betta dies. Cost: $15 to $30 for the betta, another $20 for the barbs, $5 for medication that didn't work, and the emotional weight of watching something die because you didn't research compatibility. Total, $50 to $60 for one mistake. And this happens thousands of times every single day in home aquariums around the world. Aquarium fish should be kept with species with similar temperaments. Shy, slow-swimming species like angelfish may be stressed by highly active or fin-nipping tank mates like tiger barbs. But beyond temperament, there's territory. Territorial fish may establish a little spot in the tank and chase away any fish that comes near, or they may see the whole tank as their space and constantly pick fights. When an animal is constantly on alert, fighting off intruders, trying to defend its area, it can take a toll, and stress is the #1 reason aquarium fish die before their time. This isn't just about aggressive fish hurting peaceful fish. The aggressive fish itself is suffering, living in a constant state of fight or flight that will eventually kill it. Here's a scenario most beginners never anticipate. You set up your tank, add your fish, start feeding them. You drop in flake food. The fish at the top of the tank rush to the surface and devour everything within seconds. You feel satisfied, they're eating well. Except there's a problem you're not seeing. At the bottom of your tank, your Corydoras catfish haven't eaten a proper meal in days. Fish feed at different levels, some at the surface, some in mid-water, and some at the bottom. And most fish will learn to take food wherever it's available, but shy fish may wait until food drifts into their safe zone. Bottom-feeding species need sufficient targeted feeding in the form of fast-sinking dried and frozen foods that will bypass the voracious feeding tendencies of mid-water species. But most beginners only use floating flakes. The cories get thinner and thinner. Their immune systems weaken. Eventually, they stop moving. You find them dead one morning and wonder what happened. This is the feeding zone error, and it's killing bottom-dwelling fish in countless beginner tanks. If you're only tossing in fish flakes and letting the fish that swim to the top eat it all, you may end up overfeeding those fish while underfeeding the bottom feeders. You think you're feeding your tank adequately, but in reality, you're creating winners and losers. The aggressive top feeders get fat and produce more waste. The bottom feeders starve slowly while floating in water contaminated by excess waste from overfed fish above them. The solution seems simple: use sinking pellets. But here's where it gets complicated. Many aggressive mid-level fish will rush down and steal sinking food before it reaches the bottom. You need to understand feeding strategies. Feeding floating food at one end while dropping sinking pellets at the other, turning off lights during feeding to give bottom fish a chance, or even using feeding tubes to target specific areas. None of this is intuitive. None of this is obvious. But ignoring it will slowly kill your fish. Let's discuss territory, because this is where aquarium size becomes about behavior, not just bioload. You've heard the rules: 1 inch of fish per gallon, or the more accurate 75% rule. The 75% rule states that you multiply your tank capacity by 75% to determine how many inches of mature fish you can keep. In a 30-gallon tank, that's 22.5 inches of adult fish length total. But here's what those rules miss: territory. Fish exhibit increased aggression when resources are scarce or in high demand, which explains why fish are more likely to behave aggressively in overstocked aquariums. It's not just about water quality or oxygen, it's about space. Bully fish only strike at nearby fish, and undersized aquariums are one of the biggest reasons peaceful fish turn aggressive. When there are too many fish in the same tank, there is just no solution because there is a finite number of territories fish can create in a tank. Think about this from the fish's perspective. In the wild, a territorial fish like a cichlid might defend an area several feet in diameter. You put that same fish in a 20-gallon tank, maybe 30 inches long, there's nowhere for other fish to escape its territory. Constant chasing, constant stress, constant fighting. This isn't aggression for no reason. It's desperation in a space too small to establish peaceful boundaries. The cost? Injured fish that need medication or euthanasia, stressed fish that become disease-prone, aggressive fish that kill tank mates, and the endless cycle of replacing dead fish while never addressing the core problem: behavioral incompatibility in inadequate space. Rearranging rocks is the fastest thing to stem aggression by making all fish re-establish territories on even grounds. But most beginners never learn this trick. They watch fish die and assume it's disease or bad luck. Here's something else beginners miss: time of day matters. You check your fish every morning and evening when you're home. The tank looks fine. Everyone seems calm. You go to work, come home, and find a dead fish. What happened? Some fish are nocturnal or crepuscular. In nature, most fish feed in the early morning and at dusk, with exceptions being herbivores and omnivores that forage throughout the day and nocturnal species. Some catfish are strictly night feeders and really hard to keep tabs on. That expensive Plecostomus you bought to clean algae? It's starving because you only feed during the day when it's hiding. By the time night comes and it emerges, there's no food left. Many people keep Ancestris as algae control, but they need plenty of supplementary feeding with slices of fresh courgette, sweet potato, and such like alongside higher protein dried foods. The cost? A $20 fish slowly dying of malnutrition because you didn't understand its behavioral pattern. Multiply this across millions of home aquariums, and you begin to understand the scale of the problem. Now, let's talk about the warning signs, the behaviors that scream something is wrong in a language most beginners never learned. Glass surfing is when fish repeatedly and sometimes frantically swim up and down the sides of the tank because something is wrong and the fish would go somewhere else if it could, but it's stuck. If fish are darting around the aquarium swimming erratically and this behavior persists, it could be due to poor water quality from incorrect pH levels, ammonia buildup, high amounts of nitrates or nitrites, or temperature changes. When observing fish, if they're bumping into or rubbing against ornaments or gravel, this erratic swimming behavior could be a sign of an external parasite. Fish may change color in response to stress, either darkening or going pale. And Oscars are well known for going pale when stressed or unhappy with something in their tank. Rapid gill movement or gasping at the surface is a sure sign that fish are stressed by poor water quality or low levels of dissolved oxygen. Each of these behaviors is a message. Glass surfing means the fish feels trapped by conditions it can't tolerate. Wrong tank mates, too small space, poor water quality. Erratic swimming followed by rubbing means parasites are irritating the fish's skin. Color changes mean stress hormones are flooding the system. Gasping at the surface means oxygen is depleted. Most beginners see these signs and either ignore them, thinking the fish will adapt, or they start randomly adding chemicals and medications, making things worse. They don't realize these behaviors are diagnostic tools. If you learn to read them, your fish will tell you exactly what's wrong. A stressed fish may spend more time hiding under or behind tank decorations and may stay toward the bottom instead of swimming freely. When stressed, many fish exhibit reduced feeding behavior. Excessive hiding happens when fish are scared, uncomfortable, or just want peace and quiet. But here's the catch. You need to know what's normal for each species first. Some species spend all their time at the bottom eating, sleeping, and swimming near the substrate because they are nocturnal, and sitting at the bottom for a long time is normal for many species. If your Corydoras is hiding all day, that might be normal. If your normally active Danio is hiding all day, something is very wrong. Sick fish can become aggressive with others in the tank, and they can also be the target of healthy fish who nip at or chase away the sick fish in what seems to be a natural mechanism to prevent illness from spreading. So, when you see chasing and nipping, it might not be bullying. It might be the school trying to isolate a sick member. But to know the difference, you need to observe your fish regularly and understand their normal behavior patterns. Let's talk about the real costs, not just the dollar amounts, but the complete picture of what ignoring fish behavior actually costs beginners. The average lifespan of aquarium fish after leaving the shop is no more than 3 to 4 weeks, and many died within days or even hours. Each year, people buy millions of aquarium fish. Most species have a natural lifespan of at least several years, with some living up to a decade or more in the wild, but somehow most died within weeks after purchase. Think about that. Most beginners never see their fish reach even a fraction of their natural lifespan. A neon tetra should live 5 to 8 years. Most die in a month. A betta should live 3 to 5 years. Most die within 6 months. This isn't normal. This isn't acceptable. This is a systematic failure of education. The financial cost starts small and compounds. You buy $10 worth of fish, they die. You buy 10 more, they die. You buy medication thinking it's disease, $15. You buy a new filter thinking equipment failed, $40. You buy water conditioner, stress coat, aquarium salt, another $30. 6 months in, you've spent $200 beyond your initial setup, and you still have a mostly empty tank. One beginner reported spending $35 on fish that died within 1 day, calling it money wasted. Multiply this experience across hundreds of thousands of beginners each year, and you're looking at tens of millions of dollars spent on fish that never had a chance because their behavioral needs were ignored. But money is just the start. There's the emotional cost, the guilt of watching living creatures die in your care. When otherwise peaceful fish chase, attack, or even kill each other, it can make you want to quit the hobby. Many people do quit. They spend hundreds of dollars, lose dozens of fish, feel like failures, and abandon the hobby entirely. The aquarium sits empty in the corner, a monument to misunderstanding. When a fish dies, you should feel bad, but don't let it ruin the hobby for you. Accept, learn, and grow from mistakes. But here's the problem. Most beginners don't know what mistakes they're making. They think they're following the rules. They think they're doing everything right. The pet store said these fish were compatible. The label said to feed twice a day. The book said to test the water weekly. They did all of that, and fish still died. Time is another cost people underestimate. Troubleshooting takes hours. You're on forums, watching videos, reading articles, trying to figure out what went wrong. You're doing extra water changes, trying medications, rearranging decorations, returning fish to stores. If you find your fish getting thinner, losing weight, or constantly stressed with illness, stress negatively impacts immunity, and one fish could spread sickness to the entire school. All of this time spent fighting symptoms, while the root cause, behavioral incompatibility, inadequate group sizes, improper feeding strategies, territorial overcrowding, remains unaddressed. It's exhausting, it's demoralizing, and it's entirely preventable. So what's the solution? How do you break this cycle? It starts before you buy a single fish. Research before purchasing fish, understanding compatibility charts, adult size, and water requirements helps ensure fish are suitable for your aquarium and existing fish. Understanding and respecting the unique behavioral characteristics of individual fish species you keep is essential, as different fish have varying social structures, territorial instincts, and environmental preferences. And ignoring these needs can lead to stress, aggression, and health issues. When you research a species, don't just look at water parameters. Look at behavior. How large do they get? Are they territorial? Are they schooling fish? What do they eat? And where in the water column do they eat it? Are they diurnal or nocturnal? Do they need caves and hiding spots, or do they need open swimming space? Can they be kept with other species, or do they need a species-only tank? Carefully research the specific needs and compatibility of each fish species before making additions to your aquarium to ensure a harmonious and stress-free environment. This research takes time, maybe an hour or two per species, but that investment saves you hundreds of dollars and countless lives. Once fish are in your tank, observation becomes your most powerful tool. The best advice for understanding fish behavior is to know your own fish better than anyone else, as behavior varies with every species and between individuals. Observing fish daily enables recognition of normal activities and helps spot irregular behaviors that might indicate stress or disease. Spend 5 minutes every day just watching. Not testing, not feeding, just watching. How do they move? Where do they spend their time? Are they eating when food is available? Do they interact with each other, or do they avoid each other? Is anyone hiding more than usual? Is anyone chasing others? The more familiar you are with the normal appearance and activity of your fish, the sooner you're likely to notice when one or more tank inhabitants begins to display abnormal behavior, and abnormal behaviors such as loss of appetite, difficulty swimming, and rubbing against tank objects are often symptoms of disease that should not be ignored. Keep notes if you need to. Document patterns. When you introduce a new fish, watch how the existing fish react. If there's chasing or aggression, you've caught a compatibility problem early, before it results in death. You can separate fish, rearrange decorations to reset territories, or return incompatible fish while they're still healthy. Patience is perhaps the hardest lesson for beginners to learn. You want a full, beautiful tank right now, but adding too many fish at once to an aquarium can destabilize water chemistry and cause the nitrogen cycle to stall. And as a good rule, only add up to 3 fish at a time. This slow approach gives you time to observe how each addition affects the existing community. It gives fish time to establish territories and hierarchies without overwhelming the system. The aquarium hobby rewards patience and punishes haste. Every rushed decision, buying fish on impulse, adding too many at once, choosing species because they look cool without researching behavior. These shortcuts lead to dead fish. There are no shortcuts to a healthy tank. None. Learn to match species to your specific tank conditions rather than trying to change conditions to suit fish you want. If you have hard, alkaline water, stock fish that thrive in those conditions rather than fighting your water chemistry to keep fish that need soft, acidic water. Different species have different preferences for tank parameters, and keeping incompatible species together is unwise. Understand that behavioral needs and water chemistry needs must both be met. Having perfect water parameters won't save fish from incompatible tank mates. Having peaceful, compatible fish won't save them from ammonia poisoning. You need both, but behavior comes first because behavioral stress makes fish vulnerable to every other problem. By strategically arranging plants, rocks, and driftwood, you can create an environment that caters to natural instincts and preferences, providing essential enrichment opportunities. Cichlids with complex social structures and territorial behaviors benefit from ample hiding spots, caves, and rock formations that encourage natural breeding and spawning behaviors while reducing aggression. Schooling fish like tetras and rasboras thrive in aquariums with open swimming areas and dense vegetation that allow them to exhibit natural schooling behaviors. Every species has evolved over millions of years to behave in specific ways. When you create an environment that supports those behaviors, fish thrive. When you force them into environments that contradict their nature, they die. It really is that simple. The difference between a beginner who succeeds and one who fails isn't luck. It isn't money. It isn't the quality of equipment. It's whether they learn to see fish as behavioral creatures with complex needs rather than as decorative objects that need the right water chemistry. Fish behavior is the language of aquarium health. Every movement, every interaction, every feeding response is data. Learn to read that data, and your fish will tell you exactly what they need. Ignore it, and you'll spend years replacing dead fish, never understanding why nothing works. The most expensive mistake in fish keeping isn't buying the wrong equipment. It's not choosing the wrong fish. It's not testing the water incorrectly. The most expensive mistake is ignoring what the fish are trying to tell you every single day through their behavior. That mistake costs money, time, lives, and eventually, it costs people the joy of this remarkable hobby. Your fish are talking. The question is, are you listening? If this opened your eyes to something you've been missing in your own tank, hit that like button. Subscribe to see more content that goes beyond the basics and explores what really keeps fish alive and thriving. And drop a comment below. What behavioral mistake did you make as a beginner? What did you learn from it? Your experience might save someone else's fish. Thanks for watching. Now go spend 5 minutes just observing your tank. You might be surprised what you notice.